Are you ready to connect with the core of yourself and your practice? Join over 400 professionals at the 78th Illinois Counseling Association Annual Conference in Oak Brook, Illinois, November 5th through 7th. This year's theme is Being Human, featuring an exclusive pre-conference with me, private practice innovator Joe Sanok, plus tons of different sessions on women's mental health and on therapeutic tools. You're going to earn CEs, have buffet lunches, and network at the welcome reception with me. Even get free professional headshots. Register over at ilcounseling.org. Again, that's ilcounseling.org by August 31st to secure your early bird discount. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1407. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We want you to thrive, learn the operations, marketing, websites, all of that business stuff we never learn in grad school. But we also want you to love it. We want you to feel really good about your clinical skills, about your life skills, all the different facets of just what it means to be human. And so we believe you can have a thriving business, but you can also love it. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. So that's why I'm so excited today. I have Edlynn with me. Emily is a clinical psychologist, international speaker, co-host of the popular Psychologists Off the Clock podcast, and award-winning author of Autonomy, Supportive Parenting, Reduce Parental Burnout, and Raise Competent, Confident Children. She's been featured as an expert on NPR, NBC, BBC, New York Times, and The Atlantic. Her writings also appear in the Washington Post, Parents, Scary Mommy, Good Housekeeping, not the magazine Good, stumbled there. There wasn't a comma and there shouldn't have been. Motherly Psychology Today, and she writes regularly on her Substack, which is Parent Smarter, Not Harder, which critiques modern parenting trends. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, whenever we have mic issues and connectivity issues, I feel like we've really overcome something before we've even started. So I feel like
we're already bonded.
we have already have a trauma bond going on through what it took to be here. If all of you knew what we just went through. So, Emily, I love that you're talking parenting. I'm a single parent with near full custody. They're 11 and 14. Let's just start with what were we probably taught? What was I probably taught that needs a little updating or maybe critique?
So what I find really fascinating with modern parenting is I think there's actually been a huge pendulum swing away from how we were raised and what we were brought up with, but in a way that's actually maybe too extreme. And so I am out there trying to argue for the moderate middle. So I think a lot of us grew up with more of an authoritarian, traditional parenting model where children are supposed to obey. They're supposed to listen, respect the adults at all times and just do what I ask, right?
Yeah.
And at this day and age, the positive is that we have such a richer understanding of child development, child psychology, what really helps children be healthy, happy humans. And pure obedience is not the path to that. So it's good that we're kind of swinging away, but I do find that parents get a little caught up in, my parents would never have let me do that, right? And my kid's having a complete meltdown in the aisle of Target, and I couldn't have done that. I'm thinking, well, you probably did do it. You can't remember. And I don't think it's a bad thing that our kids can actually express themselves how they really need to. Now, my critique, though, is that, and I'm going to call out gentle parenting, that has become very popular, and there are definitely positive aspects to it. But I think the way it is kind of promoted in these sound bites and on social media and these pithy images and quotes is very much focusing on relationship and connection at the expense of limits and structure,
Mm.
and really promotes this version of parent-child relationships that are really fragile. So you could like really harm your child if you raise your voice, and that's just not true. So that's where I'm out here trying to get to the moderate middle.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting as you say, just like that kind of restrictive parenting of the 80s and 90s. One thing early on in parenting that I realized was that in life, everything isn't black and white, yes and no. There's a lot of nuance to it. And so with my daughters, I've, for as long as I can remember, said you always have three choices. You can say yes and do what I say, and you won't get in trouble for that. You can say no, and in most situations, you're going to get in trouble for that. Or you can respectfully advocate for your position. So it's like if I say it's dinner time, and you're like, "Hey, Dad, I'm in the middle of this craft project. Things just dried. The paint's going to dry out during dinner." It's like I'm a reasonable person and realize that, like, okay, yeah, that's important to her. She's doing that craft, and she did it respectfully. Whereas like when I was a kid, it's like you just come to the dinner table when you're told,
Right,
and you let the
right,
paintbrush just dry out and get gross.
right,
And,
right.
and even to say there are times that you can't respectfully advocate. It's just you've
Yeah,
got to do what I say. And it's
right.
amazing how that shift has really helped in parenting, to just also be able to realize there's times that we can be lighthearted. There are times that we can just
Yeah,
like let things go, even if it's like my parents, man, they would never want me to do that.
right. And I always say, I think in psychology, we can get a little bogged down in the whole push for consistency. And consistency is so important for child growth and development. And it is, but it's
Hmm.
also impossible as a parent in real life to be 100% consistent, right? So I always say, let's be consistent ish,
Hmm.
right? Like, let's aim for consistency. But I actually think the greater value we can bring to parenting is flexibility,
Yeah.
and really seeing that, okay, my child's in the middle of a craft project, right? It would be really hard to have that interrupted and possibly then not turn out because I'm forcing her to come to dinner at this exact minute. What does 5 minutes matter?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that whole idea of once you undermine the parental authority, you lose all parental authority. And it's like, is that true?
Yeah, parents get really caught up in this. And I think this is something from our parents of the 80s and early 90s about respect, right? Respect comes up a lot. And I really reframe all of that to what's happening in the relationship. So, do you want your child to always listen to you and do what you say? Or do you want your child to feel connected to you and like they can speak up if they need to? And honestly, these days parents are living in a very scary world of threat and risk to their kids that they cannot control every pathway to risk, right? Especially with internet and online. But honestly, the safest route is that trusting, loving relationship where they will come to you if something is uncomfortable or scary and tell you because they're not afraid of getting in trouble. So
Yeah.
I think there's the relationship piece. We can still have authority. It's not mutually exclusive, right? So we still are the adults. We set the limits, we impose structure, we have expectations. Those are all very important for child development and healthy kids. And we can collaborate with them on those limits, right? We can take their input, be reasonable. That is developing critical thinking and good negotiation skills in our kids that will help them in their relationships and their careers, right? In the workplace. So I think it's thinking really big picture.
Yeah. And I think for me as a parent, thinking about, okay, the thing that I have as a standard for myself, if there is a dangerous person in authority, would I want them to follow that? So, if I say,
Exactly.
okay, someone in authority, you just listen to them, you don't question, what happens when there's someone that has ill intent? Even
Exactly.
when they were little, if they didn't want to give, say, my parents a hug, their
Mm,
grandparents, they had to acknowledge, they had to give a high five, fist bump, in some way say goodbye. But if that in
yeah.
that moment they're like, my body doesn't want to get touched, do I want them to teach to, hey, when
Right.
your body doesn't want to get touched, you still need to do it. Like that's a terrible lesson for kids. So
Yeah.
so I do think there's a lot of shifts that are going, but then I think as we've kind of destructured the overall narrative of what it means to be a parent, it's almost like this choose your own adventure is too much for people. Like they don't know where to
Yeah.
even start anymore or who to trust.
Yeah.
Um, how can parents be thinking critically about just where to start with, like, what are some maybe guiding best practices that could help them?
So I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is I always say if your child feels safe, loved, and accepted for who they are, that is everything. Like that is the nexus of like healthy parenting and healthy kids. And then everything else is an adventure. However, I also really advocate for parents to find trusted older parents in their communities in person. And we are not using our in person communities like we used to. You know, we're not parenting in villages anymore. We're on Instagram and there's no vetting on Instagram. There's a lot of bad information. So I
Yeah.
think it's looking to our mentors that we can find in real life that we trust and respect that can help us through the real life of parenting.
I love when this happens, and probably as a podcaster, you do too. Like literally a couple hours ago, David Epstein, who just wrote the book Inside the Box: How Constraints Make Us Better. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He was talking about how much our creativity and culture has just moved away from being in person, and how and I talked about our improv community I'm a part of. And as you say that, my friend Pete Kirkwood, he's that parent. He's 5 years older than me, and his kids just started going to college and are in late high school. And just seeing the relationship where even in high school they'd be jamming, playing music, they'd be having deep debates and discussions about
Yeah.
politics, and it's like that's the kind of relationship I want with my kids. And so thanks for affirming what I'm doing. I basically do this podcast to feel better about myself.
Great. I'm glad it's working today.
So,
But I also want to
oh
say
yeah, go
one more
ahead.
thing about that. One more thing is that I think the reliance on Google and the internet and figuring out from these abstract sources what to do is eroding our internal instincts and trust in ourselves as
Yeah.
well.
Our own
And that's
parental
something,
critical thinking.
yeah, and I really, when I work with parents, that's what I really work on is nurturing their own sense of confidence in their own instincts to know their child best and know they really know what to do ultimately and how to
Mhm.
respond.
I think the amount of information out there in any topic area, there always are people that are smarter than you, doing something better than you. And there's this feeling of my thoughts aren't as good as somebody else's. I need to double
Yeah.
check and make sure other people.
Yep.
And I love that you're pointing back to like you're the parent, and there's some basic things like feeling safe and having good communication relationship. That a lot of the other stuff sorts itself out.
Yep.
So,
And
so
it's going to be rocky. Like this is
yeah.
not supposed to be peaceful for 20 years. I mean, it is up and down. There are challenges. There is conflict. There is chaos. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means
Yeah.
you're human and you're raising another human.
Yes, yes, such a good reminder. So my kids go to a public school. It's one of the more affluent schools in our town. And my partner, Claire, she doesn't have kids. So she kind of still has a baby boomer mindset when it comes to parenting. And so, when she started being at my house more and, eventually moved in a bit ago, um, she was just aghast at, for one, how many parents were walking their kids to school
Yeah.
and how many parents were carrying the kids' backpacks to school. And,
Yes.
and it was really interesting how that for me opened up like a new set of eyes of critique of just like how involved, at least in my kids' school, parents are. Talk about appropriate involvement and talk about what's lost by over involvement of parents.
Perfect. This is right up my alley. This is what my book is all about, supporting our kids' autonomy. And what that means is really opening up opportunities for them to grow their independence and self sufficiency and
Mhm.
confidence in their skills. So, that is a perfect example that there's been a huge decline in kids walking to school on their own. The statistics bear that out. It's not just observation. And it's out of fear, and there's a lot of fear-based parenting, the fear of kidnapping, and is completely overblown when you look at the stats of actual strangers abducting children. I think you would have to wait out like 100,000 years to get hit by lightning for the same odds or something along those lines. So I think really pushing ourselves to face what are we uncomfortable about, and is this an opportunity for my child to develop some confidence and skill walking to school on their own? Also, a huge component of this is scaffolding. So it's a child development term. I'm sure many therapists are familiar with it, but the idea is you meet your child's skill level where they're at. So you don't want to overshoot or undershoot, and then you nudge their growth, right? So there are some kids where maybe getting out the door is stressful enough, and to force them to wear their backpack when that feels really overwhelming at 5 years old, maybe that's okay. But you work on it, right? You say, how about holding your backpack today? Like, do you want to try it out? But if it's really like too much for them in kindergarten, it's okay. But it's keeping at it, right? So they're not walking without their backpacks in 3rd grade. So it's like keeping an eye on the developmental trajectory of their independence.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents just sort of jump in and it becomes automatic, and they don't even question, does my child need this from me anymore?
Yeah. Something I hear over and over from practice owners in the Practice Academy is the one class I never was taught in grad school was how to run my business. And honestly, I felt that same thing. It's not a personal failing, but it's a gap in how we train clinicians. You build something that's real, your private practice, and nobody handed you a playbook for intake, billing, team management, or what it actually takes to scale past a handful of clinicians. That's what Valent is built for. Valent is the EHR designed exclusively for behavioral health group practices. With 2 decades of experience, 13 million clients engaging in their EMR, and 28,000 providers using their platform, Valent offers the tools that close the gap in your documentation, billing, and operations. Also, they include AI that handles the admin work so that your team will stay focused on your clients. Valent created a free interactive resource specifically for group practice owners like you. It's called Breaking Through the Growth Ceiling. In literally 5 minutes, it pinpoints your biggest bottleneck right now with a 90-day playbook to fix it. It is awesome. So if you want to break through the ceiling of growth that you feel like you just haven't been able to break through, grab that for free over at valent.io/Joe. That's valent.io/Joe. Valent is spelled VALANT.io/Joe. I just stumbled on something out of just being sick of making lunches. And like a couple years ago, I'm like, I'm going to just make your lunch twice a week. You can either make your lunch the rest of the week, or you can take hot lunch at school. And then it was like the next year, it's like, I'm only doing it once a week. And so it's like now I'm down to once a week with my daughter, who's in 5th grade. And I think it's also just like she gets a little bit of a relief, especially on the days when she has like Taekwondo after school or all these things that it's like, okay, dad's making lunch. But then it's like preparing for middle school that like this year she got her own alarm clock. And so she's responsible for like getting herself up, getting herself dressed. And now it's totally flipped in a really interesting way that I didn't expect, where she like is like, I want to watch The Simpsons with you in the morning. And I'm like, I don't really think that's good. I think you're going to be behind. But literally I'll be like, up like half an hour before she has to leave with my cup of tea. And she's like, I'm all ready. And we'll like do the checklist. And she is like that little thing of like watching The Simpsons for half an hour in the morning has helped her then be motivated, where I'm like, I'm not going to help you do all this stuff and watch The Simpsons and then feel behind. And so those little steps, like what are little hacks like that you see parents do that help nudge kids towards independence? And if I'm being selfish, for 11 and 14-year-old girls, no, just kidding. We can talk about kids.
That's funny. My kids, just for context, my kids are 16, 14, and 11. So
okay,
I have,
yeah. So you're in it as well. So I mean, what are some of those little hacks that can push like kids into more of that independence, out of their comfort zone into a growth zone, but not full on panic?
So, first of all, what I love about your example is that you listened to her rather than immediately shoot it down as a ridiculous idea. Because on the surface, it may sound a little ridiculous to watch TV before going to school, right? To some
Yeah.
families. Um, and you gave her a chance to show it, and I think what parents forget is they can change their mind, right? So you can
Mm.
say, well, let's try it and see how it goes. And then you can say that didn't work. That's okay.
Mm.
So you're not stuck if you give them a chance to show that they can do something. So I think that is huge. Listen to your kids. Like, hear when they are speaking up for something that they want to do and give them the chance to do it. Big picture, I'm a huge fan of chore routines in families.
Mm.
And I have a whole chapter in my book about how to implement and execute. And again, this is consistent-ish, does not have to be perfect. But the idea is that kids are part of developing the plan and they have a lot of choice within the expectation that they will do chores around the house.
Tell me more
So,
about that, because like how we do it is like we have an A checklist and a B checklist of things that need to be done, and then it just rotates each week of like one person's loading or one person's unloading the dishes, one person's doing trash and recycling or
okay.
compost. So tell me what that choice would look like if we were to adjust that to give them more choice within those chores.
So what we do is we have a master list of all the possible chores. And I started this when our kids were pretty young. And so it's broken down into vacuum this room, you know, like very small bits of chores. And they get to choose from that master list which chores they're going to do. And every year they add. So they take on
Hmm.
more because as you get older, you should take on more responsibility, right? And so they also choose their routine. So when is the best time for them to do the chores based on their activity schedule? And so that's where the choices come in.
And what happens if two people want taking out the compost to be their thing? Like, how does that work with the kids?
That has never happened in my family. Argued about it. Well, you could alternate, right? I
Okay.
mean, have them say both of you want to do it. So how do we figure this out?
Yeah. Or what if the opposite? There's one that no one wants to do. Do you just do
It's
that, or how
fine.
does that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I intentionally have more chores than they're going to choose.
Okay.
That's on purpose so that they feel like they're actually able to choose to not do things too.
Do you have chores that you're like, I as a parent really don't want to do this, that you make sure the kids have to do that one? Or is it really just like they get to choose which chores they want to do?
Yep, they get to choose. And we do I think scaffolding is important
Yeah.
in the chore itself. And so, for example, my 14 and 16-year-old can wash all the dishes and they're supposed to do it once a week. Sports schedules have made that a little challenging, but
Sure.
they are capable of washing all the dishes from dinner. Whereas my 11-year-old, who has a little bit weaker executive functioning and needs a little more support, he just rinses the dinner dishes and puts them in the dishwasher, but he's not washing every dish from dinner. So it's meeting their needs too, making sure that it's not overloading them. And that's fair because
Yeah.
that helps them build their confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think as I'm kind of evaluating us, sometimes, yeah, like if it's a busy night, I'll say, I'll do that chore for you. And then, building that kind of gratitude and thankfulness. So, yeah.
When I think
Okay.
you're also showing helpfulness,
Yeah.
like if you pitch in every once in a while, you're role modeling. It's okay to be helpful. You don't have to have rigid expectations.
Yeah. That's not my chore. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so we kind of got into the weeds more because I just wanted to learn from
Yeah.
you. But if we were to zoom out a little bigger and like say you were able to guide this generation of kind of parents to have elementary, middle school, because I feel like by high school, not that they're like kind of on their direction, but parents kind of move more into like a coaching phase
Yeah.
typically.
Yeah.
If you were to look at like elementary, middle school parents, and it's like if you guys just switched these things up, our society would be better off in 10 or 15 years. You've got that magic wand. Like what would you give us?
I would say stop doing so much for your kids that they can do themselves. That
Mm.
is huge. I would also say you need to really be mindful of the kind of daily and weekly schedule you are cultivating for your child, because there are so many pressures these days to be over busy and over scheduled, and that catches up with these kids and they burn out when they are teenagers. And
Mm.
so I think it's being a lot more thoughtful about how many sports are really reasonable. How far am I going to drive, and having limits and not feeling sucked into those cultural pressures around achieving and excelling and aiming for the highest levels. I think we really need to work on that.
Mm. Tell me what happens when kids have more downtime.
Oh my gosh. Kids, no one has enough downtime. I mean, this is one of my biggest concerns about our modern life. And when kids have downtime, they restore themselves. They are more stable with their mood. They have more energy. They're not as overwhelmed. They won't, I mean, a lot of defiance and conflict is from kids being completely overwhelmed and exhausted, right? So when kids have more downtime, they're more peaceful, they're calmer. It just feels better. And I think we can all relate to that, right? I think it gives them more opportunities to be creative, just kind of go around the house and pick something up they haven't played with for a while, or create something. It gives them that opportunity to really use those muscles that in all these structured activities, there's no space for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. We tend to be we try to be smart with our time, like kind of what you're saying of not doing too much at once. But man, earlier in the year, things lined up where my daughter, my youngest, really wanted to do volleyball. And on top
Oh,
of, she's already in
I'm in the
Taekwondo.
world of volleyball.
Oh my gosh. She
Club
already does
volleyball.
Taekwondo once a
Don't do
week
it.
and does dance once a week. So she had a good
Okay.
routine, but then like all her friends were doing volleyball. She's in late elementary school, and it ended up being like literally after school she would go do volleyball from like 4 to 5:30. I'd pick her up, go take her to dance. She wouldn't be home till like 7:30 almost every night. And then on top of it, we were dealing with driver's ed 4 days a week for the other
Oh
one. And it was
gosh,
like
right.
the perfect storm of
I know.
chaos. And now the whole family's like taking a breath. And my younger, she decided this, I don't even know where this came from. She found some sandpaper in the garage and decided she's just going to sand sticks. I'm like, what a mindful activity. I'm just going to sit around and like,
Yeah.
be like an
It's
old
very
man whittling.
regulating. I love it.
So
She knows what she needs. That's
she
good.
knows what she needs. Yeah. Well, we've got just a little bit left here. The last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that parents are really stressed and overwhelmed, and they need a lot of support right now. They need
Mhm.
empowerment, they need confidence, they need validation, they need compassion. And so I think sometimes in the therapy office, it can be easy to sort of blame parents for not doing things a certain way. But I really, really encourage those of us in that space with struggling parents to really have that compassion for all the modern stresses affecting and influencing them.
Mm, so good. Emily, if people want to follow your work, if they want to keep learning from you, where should we send them?
So you can go to my website, emilyedlynphd.com. And I actually have just recently opened my own solo practice. So I do offer therapy and parent coaching. And I also write a Substack, as you mentioned, called Parents Smarter, Not Harder. So people can find that. And then I'm at Dr. Emily Edlynn on Instagram and LinkedIn.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
I just love digging in with people that have spent a lot of time with something. And I imagine lots of you probably are pretty good at what you do. And so if you're thinking, okay, my practice is going well, I'm talking about the same things over and over, maybe it's time to start a podcast. Over at Podcast Launch School, we're supporting tons of therapists that are launching podcasts, that already have podcasts, that want kind of the backup support. So at Podcast Launch School, you can look at those plans. We can help you do a done-for-you launch, or we can just do support if you already have a podcast. So podcastlaunchschool.com. Also, we couldn't do this show without our sponsor. Hey, special thanks to Valent today for sponsoring this show. They put together an amazing resource. It's going to take you 5 minutes to quickly evaluate what's stopping your growth. It's going to pinpoint your biggest bottlenecks right now and give you a 90-day playbook to fix it. You can download that totally free over at valent.io/Joe. That's VALANT.io/Joe to grab that resource. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.